Ever had a Minecraft server? Then you likely had either a bucket server like Spigot or PurPur, or a modded server like Forge or Fabric. But what if I tell you there are thousands and thousands of other servers no one has ever heard about? And I didn't know myself until Doom from the Eimer Project approached me to talk about those lost servers. And I pondered, I wondered, I huffed and I puffed. How do I cover all these cool projects in a lifetime? And while rewatching Wendigo's old videos, I got it, an Iceberg video. Now it's important to mention that I will cover most of these in a separate video and have already covered the popular ones on my channel, so check them out if you have the time. But for now, let's dive right in with Tier 1. This tier is mostly well-known servers for the budding server admin, with the first one being the most common one, the vanilla Minecraft server. The vanilla Minecraft server is just the standard thing Mojang ships, being a non-open source code base, which we will get back to in a minute, and is fairly bare bones. It's literally all you need to start a small server with you and your friends for free on your old laptop, or even on your phone for some reason. The fact that it was so bare bones led to the creation of Bukkit. Now, Bukkit was the biggest server software in 2011 because it allowed you to have plugins all the way up until its death at the hands of Mojang because of disagreements with the open source community and Bukkit's license around 2014, which was sparked by the original EULA, by the way. The effects that Bukkit had are still somewhat felt in the community, as many projects either got started around this project or were heavily affected by it. But it's not gone yet, because the next one is Spigot. Spigot is perhaps the most known server software right behind PaperMC, as it's a fork of Bukkit. And for those who don't know what a fork is, it's basically someone making their own version of a piece of software. But this is only in the open source community. Spigot being created and maintained by MD5, and it revolutionized a lot of aspects of the server code. And initially was meant to improve performance, but recently has lagged behind in performance and being surpassed by other performance-oriented server software. Now, Forge is something else. Up until this point, all server software was purely vanilla, allowing plugins like Essentials to run on top of it. Forge, however, allows a modification of Minecraft itself. Being released in 2011, it quickly became the biggest mod loader in Minecraft's history. However, recently it lost a lot of momentum because of other software like Fabric and Quilt being a more efficient solution. Forge still held a prominent position, with many mods working on it, right until its end and new rebirth as NeoForge earlier this month. Fabric is another modded Minecraft server. Being fairly recent, it boasts a lot of performance upgrades compared to Forge's more rigid and sometimes old standards, with Fabric devs pointing out that there's a lot of freedom that they have with its new API. So if you want performance optimized mod loader, go for Fabric. Just keep in mind, some big old school mods or established mod packs are not on Fabric, and in some cases will never be. Now, BungieCord is a piece of software called a proxy, allowing you to string a bunch of servers together like a lobby, creative, or survival server, all to one network. And ever since its release, it has stayed the standard up until another software from the next team we're going to talk about came about. PurPur. PaperMC is the most known and widely used server software according to Bstats. It boasts a lot of async code, speeding up the game by fixing the issue of Minecraft's single-threaded performance. With a large and dedicated team and lots of players on its software, it is the golden standard and the basis for a lot of other forks, despite itself being derived from SpigotMC. Now, that was the first tier. Let's dive a little bit deeper into the second tier, the lesser known server software most people have either heard about at some point, perhaps used, but it's not mainstream or is just not in public consciousness. With the first one being Glowstone. Glowstone is our first example of what is known as a reimplementation. See, Bukkit forks like PurPur and Spigot insert its own code into the Minecraft server. Implementations like Glowstone rewrite the entire code from scratch with zero code from Minecraft in it, meaning they have to reverse engineer everything, or even use their own systems for mod behavior, inventory saving, and etc. Again, I go way more in depth about my video about them, where I got an interview with the developers, so if you're looking for a cool new project, check out that video. Velocity and Waterfall I put together here because they basically do the same thing than BungieCord, but are maintained by the PurPur team. However, there's one big difference. See, while Waterfall is a fork of Bukkit to again increase its performance, Velocity is not really a fork. It aims to be faster than both of them and fix the issues that they had. Now, up next is something that isn't out yet, but is something so cool I need to talk about it. Folia. So remember when I said Minecraft is single-threaded? Folia aims to split up a single server into regions, with each region having its own tick rate and core assigned to them, making them even more efficient and faster in total, meaning that if you have a lag machine in one area, the rest of the server isn't affected. Developed by the Paper team again, it is still in development currently and needs 16 cores to even function. It's a cool thing that's nowhere near finished. PurPur is yet another fork, but this time from PaperMC, with a twist. PurPur is not a performance fork, but it manages to be faster than Paper in some cases, because they apply patches from pufferfish, which we'll talk about in a minute, which is also a performance fork. Aside from that, PurPur is trying to make the Minecraft code more customizable by allowing players to modify values normally locked, allowing for unseen amounts of optimization and customization, and with that being said, that brings me to pufferfish. Pufferfish is a performance fork of Paper, created by the pufferfish host. Because they were a host, they wanted something that would save them a lot of resources, so they made something that promised even more performance. Now sadly, they do follow the trend of premium forks, and while there is an open source variant, not all the patches from Pufferfish Plus make it into Pufferfish itself. Now another fork that I mentioned a bit ago was Airplane. And no, I'm not gonna talk about the Airbus or something. This is another performance fork made by Paul with a very unique system called Deer, which basically limits the amount of decisions a mob can do. In other words, it modifies its behavior, and this is actually something already inside of PaperMC, but just hard-coded. So it's similar to how PurPur gives the users the ability to change a lot of variables. Here, Airplane gives you the ability to change this as well. Sadly, it seems that they quit development or are just stuck on 1.17, with no further updates regarding the project in over a year. Quilt is another mod loader, and this time being an offshoot of Fabric, boasting an even greater performance boost. Sadly, Quilt also caused some commotion in the modding scene due to repeated claims of the Fabric's main dev being a bigot, so the internal war between Forge and Fabric got even more heated. Now Quilt isn't without its critics, with many people saying it's just going nowhere. It's still trying to take root and will likely be more stable as time goes on. Now Sponge Powered has two components, Sponge Vanilla, which is another implementation using mixins, and Sponge Forge, which is a piece of software allowing plugins to work on Forge. The caveat being it needs to be written for mixins. So some of the big plugins like Essentials don't actually work, despite its original creator expressing its desire to do so. Sponge is also a very cool project, so again, if you want to help with a cool piece of software, be sure to check them out, and of course, check out my video where I interviewed them. And that was all of the lesser known ones. Now we are heading into the unknown. These projects are either unheard of, too small to be significant, or just very, very niche. And who else to start with than Mindstorm? No, not Lego Mindstorm, Mindstorm. It is one of the super duper niche servers, whereas most servers give you their own feature set with their own values. Mindstorm literally said, do it yourself, giving you access to their super powerful API, which is just a skeleton for you to build your server exactly how you want it. Don't want an inventory system? Don't program it. Don't want zombies? Don't program it. This is peak customizability, as it's literally meant to make perfect fit solutions. Now moving on to our first dead project. Kinda. Hmod was the first ever third-party Minecraft server, with its peak during the Minecraft Alpha, and it was the first that allowed you to build plugins to run on the server to change how Minecraft was played. Now you might ask why I include a piece of software that's no longer being developed. Well, my friends, it's important to note that Hmod's team eventually went on to create Bucket, and that gave us Spigot and PaperMC, meaning that without this first foundation, we couldn't have Minecraft that we have today, which is very scary to think about. Now moving on to the joke of the community, Yatopia, which was, oh boy, such a big mess. While it started out very good, people applied so many patches to improve performance that they broke the software by making it incredibly unstable. And some of the patches that they implemented didn't even do anything. But why was it so unstable? Well, if you want to find out the answer to that question, let's do a little experiment. Take off the brakes from your car, because if you do so, you can't slow down, thus you will go faster. But yeah, you're gonna crash eventually. It's been discontinued for years and now is seen more as an in-joke in the community. Now, Cat Server is a self-proclaimed high-performance hybrid server, and the first hybrid server in the list. See, while Sponge runs on top of Forge as a layer of communication between the plugins and Forge, Cat Server just mashes Bucket and Forge together. And you know, that can give some stability issues, I've heard. But apparently it's pretty stable overall. Probably because it's a fork. Wait, hang on, where did it even fork from? Oh fuck, no, moving on. Purplane is an odd one, as it's discontinued. See, the developer Omega wanted a way to use PurPur, which we previously discussed, with the performance patches from Airplane, which is another performance fork. Like I said, there are thousands of these. Overall, it's just a personal project that's no longer being developed because it got merged into the main one, which is kinda neat. Now, CraftBucket++ and are two separate things, but important nonetheless. See, CraftBucket was the original name for Spigot. It played on the programming languages like C, adding ++ to their name and reversed it. CraftBucket++ was a performance fork of CraftBucket, while CraftBucket was a fork of ++ and was forked to add improvements and make it more compatible, as ++ broke a lot of plugins. As far as I know, the ++ variant isn't around anymore, at least not in a relevant way. And now we only have - in the form of SpigotMC. Now, if you could follow that, here's a cookie, because I had so much difficulties even voicing this part. MCHPRS is a high-performance multi-threaded redstone server. See, it's tailored toward big redstone contraptions. For example, that 8-bit computer made in Minecraft could probably run better on MCH. However, it is missing a lot of features from the standard Minecraft experience, and it's only intended to use as a plot-based redstone server. So yeah, pretty neat, pretty niche. And now, I think it is time we enter the final tier of the iceberg. The forgotten tier, where these projects were either instrumental in what Minecraft is today, or just totally unknown servers that do very cool things in their own way. Starting with Lightstone. Lightstone was a fork of Glowstone. Like I said in my video about them, at a certain point the original dev for Glowstone left, and it was just not active anymore. Eventually, someone forked Glowstone to make it better, and eventually that got merged back into the main thread, with the blessing of the current maintainer. So while Lightstone is continued, it still lives on in Glowstone today. Now, the previous tier we mentioned Hmod. And well, I lied, it's not really dead, but close. Canary Mod is a direct continuation of Hmod, basically being a forefather to the current abundance of bucket forks. It does have its own API and dedicated community, so I don't think it's going anywhere soon, but that being said, there's a reason why it's in this tier. Rubber Bucket, or Rubber Band, was also made by MD5, the creator of Spigot, and Bungee Cord. It was basically just Bungee Cord before Bungee Cord was a thing. Basically, you had to run the Rubber Bucket as a client and as a server, and with Rubber Bucket stringing everything together on the server side, and Rubber Band allowing you to cross over on the other servers using Rubber Bucket. The main downside that was you as a player had to use Rubber Band, instead of nowadays just having it implemented in most server software. Spoutcraft is well and truly lost. It was a cool server that allowed you to send mod data over the client, so even vanilla players could join, but still had the custom features like recipes. Little is known about it nowadays, despite it actually being the birthplace of Spigot. One of its domains was bought by a third party and is now a malware site, and the other just contains their logo. That being said, that does bring me to something important I just want to talk about at the end of the video. But let's finish off this iceberg with Minecraft. Minecraft is a Minecraft server that's written in the Lisp when I cannot do this. Okay, no, I can't do this, but yeah, it's a funny pun because the language is Lisp, which is a real language, by the way, look it up. No real significant reason why I added it in here, I just think it was very fucking funny. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the Minecraft server iceberg. And the end of my double upload schedule. I hope you enjoyed a little trip into the history and depths of Minecraft's long and complicated history. Like I said in the beginning, most if not all subjects on this iceberg will be getting their own dedicated video at one point. So feel free to stick around and hit that sub button, like so many of you already did. It's absolutely been insane the amount of support I get over the last few weeks, and I'm so excited to bring you more. But I do want to talk about one last thing. My colleague and friend, Just Doom, from the Eimer Project, is trying to preserve a lot of cool and forgotten server jars that have been released over the year. It's a pretty cool project, and one I'm gladly supporting myself. So if you were a dev, a server host, or just someone who dabbled into one of these more forgotten servers and still have a jar laying around, please feel free to join the Eimer Discord, because preserving this incredibly diverse historical record is important. Because as a Minecraft historian, I'd like these records to still be here when I'm gone. But with that being said, I was Lunar, you've been awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. I would like to say thank you to my many pebbles on the Patreon, my boulders, who are Jens, Rebecca and Sneesonics, and of course Willox. And I would like to say a massive mountainous thank you to Farron, Hans Franz, Kikiso at Millhouse, and now also Comet Speed for pledging to me on the mountain tier. If you would like to have some behind the scenes content, interviews, and many more stuff, feel free to pledge to me on patreon.com/cygnusmc. Thanks again, lads. And for those who don't know what a fork is, it's basically someone making their own version of a piece of software. But this is only in the open source community. This one is Spigot being created and maintained by MD5. PaperMC and it revolutionized a lot. And it revolutionized a lot of aspects of the server code. And initially was meant to improve performance, but recently has lagged behind in other. Jesus Christ, man. But recently has lagged behind in other. But recently has lagged behind in performance by other performance-oriented server software